Get all the latest news during NFL free agency's legal tampering period. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
The Fan Offseason Special, another Tuesday, back with you guys. Myself, Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland to my left, Darryl Ryder to my right, assuming that might also be the alignment that you guys see. I don't know. I can't see the YouTube thing in front of me at this very second, but it's my physical spot that we have, and it's a legal tampering window officially open, which basically means everybody under the sun gets signed, even though they can't actually get signed for a little bit more time. But that means we have a lot going down in the NFL and a lot going down with the Browns that we're going to cover today. Everything from offensive linemen to replacing Devin Bush and other ancillary things floating out there. But we start with the most important question of the day. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
I'm well. It's a beautiful day walking in here today. It was, obviously we've been coming in. It's been dark out. It's been snowy. So today is beautiful. Light out, beautiful weather. It was a nice walk in today.
There's nothing better than driving with my windows down in March. That about seals it for me.
I have not received a contract for multiple years with an average of $10 to $20 million a year. So a little salty today. A
little bitter. Okay.
But the sun and the warmth making up for it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I have any tape floating out there, but I started at right guard in 8th grade. It's the only year I played football. You think I could send that tape in? I don't know. We're looking for depth offensive line.
We'll see what happens with Joel, but I think,
I'm pretty sure,
once that happens.
I'm pretty sure we know what's happening with Joel at this point.
It feels like we're getting there, and we're definitely going to get there within this show. But I did want to kind of highlight what the Browns have done so far, and we'll talk about kind of Andrew Berry, but I've been relatively pleased as you can be with, mostly just a bunch of offensive linemen getting signed, right? Like, you're going to get more excited for if they bring a quarterback in here. You'd be more excited if they brought a wide receiver in here. Just naturally, those are the type of guys that you look at as like the massive difference makers. And I just told you, I played offensive line. I stared at offensive line during games probably way more often than I should. But these are massive moves, obviously, coming in from an area where we know the Browns needed just a complete overhaul, basically from top to bottom. And they bring in, all between the last 2 days, Zion Johnson, bringing back Tevin Jenkins, which the team's officially announced because that's the one name they can officially announce, and Elton Jenkins, as of the last couple of hours, coming over from Green Bay. He was released. He has now been signed by the Browns. And what I've felt like, I don't know, I looked at the offensive line, the free agency class, and you really didn't have a lot to be excited about really across the board. There weren't a ton of big names coming free. Wasn't like, outside of Tyler Linderbaum, who obviously the Browns are rumored to be interested in, and then he's playing for almost $10 million a year, more than anybody else that's playing the center position over in Vegas now. I feel like Andrew Berry's done a pretty solid job at kind of filling out, especially that interior, over the last 2 days.
Well, this has gone exactly how I thought it was going to go. Andrew Berry, said at the Combine they weren't going to be hyperactive in free agency. And I wouldn't say that this is hyperactive. This is active.
Yeah.
Okay.
Raiders are probably hyperactive. Titans are probably hyperactive. They've made like 10 signings.
Yeah, the Raiders certainly, obviously, with the money that they're throwing around. Granted, they've got some salary cap commitments that they need to make this offseason, so that's why you're seeing them spend the way they're spending. But, shoring up the offensive line. Now they got 4 of the 5 starters, which I think, and we'll get into it later, I think that points to what they're going to do in April in the first round of the draft. You replace Devin Bush hours after he agreed to leave. And I thought that was a real good job by Andrew Berry, anticipating that was, in fact, going to be the case. And I think that he knew that a couple of weeks ago in Indianapolis, that they were not going to be able to keep Devin Bush, will sign, has agreed to sign with the Chicago Bears after 4 p.m. tomorrow. So looking at what Berry has done the last couple of days, it's not sexy. It's not going to get a lot of folks excited. You're not selling a lot of PSLs for Brook Park over this. This is a meat and potatoes offseason for the Cleveland Browns, okay? And right now I think Andrew Berry's done a real good job in that department when you look at the players that he has signed, and they've been market contracts.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely hasn't overpaid. I mean, Zion Johnson might have been like a little rich for people. That is also a guy who's 26, and I know everybody wants to jump to the PFF grades, and Coach, I'm sure you've watched little Zion Johnson tape, so you can tell me. But everybody wants to jump to the PFF grades, and the guy was playing, no matter where he was playing on the offensive line last year, left guard or right guard, without the starting tackle on the other side of him. And based on everybody that played the worst offensive line in football, it's probably pretty hard to look good as an individual on PFF or probably even on tape to some degree, given the offensive lineman around, you know?
Well, yeah, the PFF for me has always been a tool. It hasn't been kind of my, it doesn't give context. It doesn't tell you what the play call is. And even for me, watching the film, I don't know the play call sometimes. So you're guesstimating on what your experience is. But I will tell you what, these three, I get very excited about offensive line because, as I've said before, you win football up front. And that's why the Browns defense was so good because of that front four. And same with the offensive line. Now, these guys aren't what people, I've been asked a lot of questions on, like, what did these guys do well? I think they're really good pros, if that makes kind of any sense. What I mean by that is they're not maulers. They're not Wyatt Teller where they're going to knock you off the ball. But what they are is they understand what defense is doing. They understand leverage. They understand where to put their pads. They understand what shoulder to attack with. They understand where the ball carrier is going. So very smart guys. Zion is not great in pass protection, but he's inside. You can help a guy inside, reduce splits. There's some things you can do out there as compared to the tackle. So Jenkins, re-signing Jenkins, got to keep him inside. He's solid guard, struggles out at tackle. Obviously, they got to address that left tackle moving forward here. But the guys they got are guys that you would like them to knock everybody down, but that's not always what successful football is. You got to know who you're blocking, and you got to make sure you get a hat on a hat. And these guys will do that. So I think it's been these guys they brought in. I think it's a very, very good offseason so far because the guys that everybody wants to see, the receivers, the quarterbacks, etc., they're not any good unless this offensive line gets better. So I think they're doing a good job of improving this offensive line.
So, Coach, let me ask you a question, because you take a look and you tell me the guys aren't maulers, and these are mostly interior guys, or you talk about that run game. What does that do kind of scheme-wise for you? Does that limit you in somewhat of what you can run, or does it lead you to believe the Browns are probably leaning towards one scheme compared to another, especially on the ground game?
Well, I'll use Wyatt Teller as an example. Wyatt doesn't need help. He will knock you down. He generates so much power in that little area of an offensive lineman. But when you're not a guy who's vertically going to displace somebody, you got to make sure your double teams are good. And the double teams are good if you work at them and you're technically sound and fundamentally sound in your double teams. And you understand where blitzes are coming from. I was watching, got some cut-ups of Zion, and what he does really well is he sees blitzes coming, and he understands this guy's in the 3 technique. My A-gap is open. There's some things he does very, very well. He understands the game. So, no, it doesn't limit them at all. They just got to be very sound in what they're doing. And compared to what the Browns used to run, so the Browns, for a while when they were rolling, they didn't care how many you had in the box. They're giving it to Chubb, and they were going to try to knock you down. Now you're going to see things with this offense, obviously more pass, but even in the run game, they're going to run the ball with 6-man box. They're not going to run against these 7, 8-man boxes. So you're going to see more position blocking, but again, they're going to do whatever the defense does poorly and whatever they do well, because that's how Monken works. So no worries. These guys are all very, very good at what they do. But they're not people who are just going to physically knock you down like Wyatt Teller did, but they're very good offensive linemen.
So they've obviously done, a good amount of work here. We talk about it. You feel relatively comfortable saying they have about 4 starters in the room right now between the trade for Titus Howard and the 3 guys they've added. There's obviously still some work left to do in the trenches because you don't have a left tackle as it stands right now.
Yeah.
And partially barring DeJuan Jones' health, but even last year we saw him shifted back over to right tackle because left tackle wasn't really working. You kind of get into an interesting spot because left tackle needs to be addressed. I think the thing that goes unnoticed, and you want to talk about not sexy, it's not going to be a sexy thing to talk about, but we just saw Elton Jenkins deal with injuries. We know that Tevin has not been the healthiest person in the world. Yeah. Titus Howard, the last couple of years, has been healthy, but earlier in his career dealt with some injury issues. This is not the healthiest offensive line, and what you're missing right now, offensive line-wise, too, that you're going to see this pop up probably later March into April and kind of you'll address it in the draft. Offensive line depth, you're still going to be signing offensive linemen in here because guys who are sticking around are like, KT Leviston's still under a contract, if I'm not mistaken. Zach Zinner's still here. Luke Whippler's still here, but you're still missing, a ton of tackle depth and probably some interior depth on top of that. So there's still a lot to add to this room. In addition to, I don't know where you're finding left tackle. It feels like Rasheed Walker or you're going to the draft right now.
Yeah, well, you've got versatility, though.
Yep.
Like, Titus Howard's played guard as well as right tackle, okay? Elton Jenkins from the Packers, his 2 Pro Bowl seasons were at guard, but he played center last year, okay?
Has also, that 2022 year, played right tackle. He was left guard, right tackle while he was a Pro Bowler as well.
Right. Zion Johnson has experience playing both guard positions. So, yes, I hear what you're saying about depth, concerns about injury history with the offensive line, but what you've seen Andrew Berry do is bring in guys with a lot of versatility so you can move pieces and parts around because, let's be honest about it, while we had a 3 to 4 year stretch where we got really spoiled by the health of the Browns' offensive line, and it seems like the last 3 years just been decimated with injuries, and then they've just kind of had to fly by the seat of their pants many weeks, and especially last season, right? And so you try and plan for the worst case scenario, and I kind of feel like with some of the players that Barry has brought in, like that's what he's done is he's given himself a little bit of insurance. Okay, if this guy goes down, well, we have the versatility and the flexibility to move some people around up front. They're not done, okay? Let's not act like, okay, we can just wash our hands of this, kick back, relax, and wait for the NFL draft at the end of April for them to pick the left tackle. They're not done. I do think that there could be a couple of fringe signings, if you will. Coach has talked about KT Leviston. Maybe he can work at guard and not so much at tackle, which
Can't at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, just put a construction barrel instead of KT out there if you're going to use him at tackle. But I do like that Andrew Berry has found players that he clearly likes, but also, too, he's brought in guys that can be moved around that offensive line if circumstances dictate that's what they need to do.
And I mean, we've also gone back. Andrew Berry's had the quote of like, hey, offensive linemen can kind of, they can play both sides. Like if I have a right tackle, I'm confident that he's probably able to pick up and play left tackle. But it's not that now those words are just coming out and they don't mean anything. He's legitimately picking up guys who, hey, they're showing me they can do this, right? I believe guys can do it. These guys have already displayed to me, oh, well, if you've played, right guard, this guy's also played left guard. Like he's done it both. Zion Johnson has played both sides. Titus Howard has played both sides. Elton Jenkins has played both sides of the line. Like all of these guys have the versatility, and Tevin fits into that as well, where, yeah, it's not only injury insurance, but I think it also, like even right now, we could build out an offensive line and what we think it kind of looks like. For all we know, they could just go, oh, Elton Jenkins is better at left guard. We're actually just going to swing Zion in to be a center because, sure, he could probably do it. And again, I'm not saying that's happening, but you've left also like a million combinations that it feels like this offensive line can still have. Yeah,
I mean, right now, this is how I'm projecting this to play out. I've got Titus Howard as the right tackle. I've got Zion Johnson as the right guard. I've got Elton Jenkins as the center. Tevin Jenkins as the left guard. Okay, that's just, and then left tackle, probably the draft. That's where I'm at right now. Now they may flip the guards. Maybe they put Tevin on the right side and they put Zion on the left side just because that's the quarterback's blind spot. Maybe you want a little more experience on that side. So, but there is, I think, some combinations that are going to be at George Warhop and Todd Monken's disposal here. And then, as they go through the OTAs and the mini camps and then training camp, right? I think all this stuff's going to sort out. You just hope that everybody gets to the regular season healthy and the plan that they originally had here in the offseason, right? They'll tell you right now they don't have a depth chart. They're lying to you. They absolutely have a depth chart right now, okay? Todd Monken's got one. Andrew Berry's got one. Especially Andrew Berry has one right now, whether it's the magnets up on the board in the war room or whatever. But they do have a depth chart right now. And again, I think these are your starters, and then everyone else is going to kind of fill in behind them.
It makes a lot of sense. And we're going to get more into this offensive line, too, because one of the pieces that we pointed to who might feel like we know, but we can't 100% say we know at this point, Joe Bitonio is still floating out there. Today is, displayed as kind of the last day. We know on Joe Bitonio, but we sit here at 7:17 and still don't have an answer. 216-474-0092. How much more work do the Browns still have to do on the offensive line? The signings you see, plus, are they signaling right now that Joel is not coming back? That's coming your way in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darryl Ryder, all with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special right here on 92.3 The Fan.
Imagine being a million miles away. Explore what's possible. Ask your doctor about Tremfya. Visit tremfya.com or call 1-800-526-7736.
There's Cavs and there's NBA news that happens while you at work. Baskin and Phelps, weekday mornings starting at 10. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Fan Offseason Special with you guys here. Myself, Lance Reisland, Darrow Ryder, taking you guys through what has been a very busy period, not only for the Browns, but obviously the entirety of the NFL. And dare I say, one of the most fun times certainly the NFL offseason. It's that and the draft. Because those might be really the only two times that I'm fully invested during the offseason. We're always invested, but I don't know that I'm fully entertained at any point during the offseason. When we get to OTAs and minicamp, it's there's some fun going on there, but it's a lot of guys you don't hit for so long, and the Browns for so many years, the coaches, you've pointed out several times, they didn't hit very much at all. It's just just throw me a new roster and allow me to imagine and hope to probably eventually have that hope and imagination be killed 3 weeks into the season, but I can hope and imagine. So
never lose a game before you play it. That's always been my thing. It's like when people say this is going to be a transition year. Hopefully, they're not saying that, right? Yeah. You should try to win every single game, and if you have that mentality, that's what kind of with culture. That's what hopefully they got to get out of the cycle, and that's the cycle that we all know. And the only way you do that is by doing it. And it sounds kind of weird, but you got to say, I'm not building towards week 2. I'm not building towards next year. I'm winning week 1. That's what they got to get to.
Listen, if they hire me and put me on the coaching staff when I walked into week 7 last year, I would have been guns a-blazing, think we could win. When I say you're in this chair, by week 7, the season was pretty much, hopefully they just give us a little bit more entertainment than they have over the first 6 weeks. And didn't really. Kind of disappointed. But hopefully this year does. We are in hope time. This is getting better. But it's still talking about kind of where the Browns' offensive line is at, where they're heading. And obviously now with the offensive line filling out, the question just turned back to, okay, well, Joe Bitonio has been waiting to give you a decision, right? They allowed him to prolong this decision basically into today before the league year officially flips over and the signing window officially opens. We still don't have word on Joe Bitonio, but the way the Browns have attacked the offensive line, I think, in a lot of ways puts the writing on the wall, because you not only went out there and said, okay, I'm going to get Zion Johnson, which I think, a couple of the shows earlier on yesterday and even today had pointed out to the fact of, it's probably a sign that Joel's there. I was a little more hesitant. Zion has played right guard. You could still bring Joel back at left guard. It's not at the end-all, be-all. When you go and re-ink Tevin Jenkins, well, it's not to say it absolutely can't be Joel coming back. I think it's a pretty heavy indication at this point that Joel has made his decision, whether that to be officially hang it up and retire for the season, or if he feels so inclined, test free agency, go out, see what else is out there, if he can be on a more competitive roster for the final year of his career.
You've got 3 players that they have, one obviously brought back Tevin today, but Zion Johnson, Elgton Jenkins, both of those guys can play. So you got basically 3 guards, right, if you will, that they signed. I think they're telling us that Joel's probably not coming back. So they had until today, the contract voids. They had a couple other contracts that voided today as well. And again, for all we know, they're working out something right now to get his cap figure lowered. Because if he does retire, it is a $23+ million cap hit. They don't owe him any money, but it's the cap charge from the constant restructures that they had done with his contract in previous years to use it to free up cap space. So I think they're telling you what's most likely to happen. However, they can still bring him back. Okay, this also does not mean that it's in stone, that there's no chance whatsoever that Joel's going to come back. But I think that the moves that they have made the last 2 days are pointing towards they are prepared to move on from Joel should he, as you said, retire or decide he just wants to go be a free agent and go elsewhere. I honestly, though, believe Joel will retire rather than go play elsewhere. Everything
that we've seen out of Joel probably points he stuck it out through Brown's years of as bad as the last 2 years. And also, I mean, going all the way back to 2016, 2017, Joel was there through.
He saw the good,
1-31.
bad, and the ugly, and there was a lot of ugly while he was here. He blocked for more quarterbacks than Joe Thomas. He played in more games than Joe Thomas did. Played at least in my view, the same level that Joe Thomas played at throughout his career. Extremely consistent. He played through injury late in his career. Would not allow, whether it was his knee, his ankle, his back, would not allow that to keep him off the field. Played through a lot of things late in his career. So it would be a loss, but I think Andrew Berry did a pretty good job of insulating them from that loss.
Yeah, and listen, I understand. Obviously, I think everybody here would rather prefer to have Joel Bitonio back just based on what he's done here in his career and still playing at relatively high level. Last year, it wasn't like he was a guy that looked like he was in the final year of his career and really on a kind of a swan song of a last season. But at the same time, you can get upset that now the Browns have kind of insulated that. Like before this, when we were getting into free agency, I mean, it felt like it was a massive staple. You almost needed Joel Bitonio back because you hadn't prepared for this entire offseason for the previous 3 or 4 years. The offense linemen you did take have not panned out. DeJuan Jones has been injury-riddled. Zach Zinner hasn't ever elevated to the spot. Like, his best game played last year was at center, and he's taken to be a guard. And that's really the only decent game that we've even really seen out of Zach Zinner, I think, when he's been on the field. So it felt so bad, but I think with the recent additions, even if right now you told me, one of the guards they took, if it's Tevin Jenkins, because we still don't know the contract details officially on that yet. So maybe that's a lesser deal. And Tevin's a rotational guard, and it's really going to be Zion and Elton Jenkins, and maybe they start Luke Whippler or somebody they draft at center. You still feel relatively comfortable at where they're at, especially comparatively to where we started this whole thing. You've gotten back quicker, and I think Andrew Berry had kind of pointed to that in the offseason too. He talked about, we took a look at kind of what the Vikings did in building their offense line. He mentioned directly Ben Johnson and what he did to rebuild the Bears' offense line in a year. It wasn't just blindly going out there and clearly I failed to build up the offensive line the last couple of years, but I also under the understanding that other teams have rebuilt their offensive line. Even if we're not getting this to, it's going to be a top 10 offensive line in football, he always felt kind of comfortable that it at least sounded like he could get this offensive line back to much better than they were last year and still field a solid offensive line moving forward.
Well, he told us at the Combine the model he was going to follow, which is a little unusual that Andrew Berry was that transparent about it, but he mentioned how the Chicago Bears rebuilt their line in one offseason last year, and look how that panned out for them, and that he was going to follow a similar formula to just demonstrate, hey, this works. You can do this while everyone's freaking out. Joel Bitonio is going to retire. Wyatt Teller's already said bye-bye to the point of his family's auctioned off all his Browns gear for charity, right? The injuries up front, right? You got all 5 positions potentially. You have to be refilled this offseason. Don't panic. Don't freak out. This can be fixed in one offseason. Chicago Bears Exhibit A. Look at the way the Baltimore Ravens and how they built their offensive line. Same thing, a very similar thing. Not so much all in one offseason, but same thing. Free agency signings, trades, and the draft. And this is exactly what there's only one spot he really needs to fill from a starting perspective. That's left tackle, and I think we all know where that left tackle is coming from. The key is he better this time draft the Tristan Wirfs and not the Jed Wills.
Well, left tackle gets interesting because I think you look at the draft and only one guy probably stands out as a true starting left tackle in this class. I mean, I can't think of many others.
Well, there's two Monroe Fielding and the Lemu kid, the kid out of Utah, are true left tackles.
It's a good thing they have the number 6 pick in the draft.
Yes.
Well, when we go back to Joel, I thought Joel would possibly stay because Warhop, and Warhop is going to give you that Callahan, and I tell everybody the why, right? So that it goes back to why they didn't get injured and things of that. If football is really a game, if you can play at 100 miles per hour, you rarely get hurt. And I think the offensive line was so tentative last year. I'm not saying that's why that got hurt, but they were so confident when Callan was here. And if you remember, the guys would go in because they kind of knew what they were doing. And I thought that would kind of keep Joel around. Now, they've made some good moves, but if Joel came back, that would be outstanding in terms of what they could do with that 6th pick. I think Joel comes back, it makes that 6th pick maybe doesn't have to be the tackle because you can you can go out and get a game changer, in my opinion. But Joel obviously has earned that right, and that was my hope with Warhop being here, that he would stay, because Warhop's going to give him that old kind of veteran. Here's why we're doing this, what we're doing. So, but the writing is kind of on the wall now with the acquisitions they've just had.
I think it kind of tells you maybe what the Browns thought of even the tackle play in general in this class too. Like even in getting Titus Howard and making sure that you shored up the interior offensive line. And we talk about the guys who played right tackle. It feels like everybody we talked about, like first round right tackles, are really that guy might be better suited as a guard or an interior offensive lineman. I mean, that's Fano, that's Maui Noah, that's everybody that's been in that range. And why? We'll listen to draft experts all the time, and I talked to John Ledger yesterday and every single Monday, and we talked to him, and he's like, the offensive line play in this draft just is like, there's a couple of guys who look good, but a majority of it is like you're taking developmental guys who are probably going to be better after a year of development, not really like full-time, ready-to-start type of guys. And if you're picking those guys out, it is slim pickings the top of the draft right now.
Well, you talk about a guy, though, you talk about the versatility that they're kind of going with what Barry likes. That excites you with Fano and Maui Noah, because those are guys who can play inside and outside. I think Fano can be an outstanding left tackle because he's kind of raw. He's a guy who's played right. Obviously, he's been on the right side, but when you watch his feet, I always say he's got tight end feet to tackle, and I think he's a guy, even more than DeJuan Jones, can play the left side. But again, I think it would be in a year. Hopefully they're not saying we're going to go out and we're going to get this left tackle and we're going to let him play, because that'll kill your quarterback, whoever that is. And if you're trying to find out who your quarterback is, you better shore up that left tackle. So if they're not confident in the guy, then that's got to be their splash, their last splash here, I think, before the draft.
And they have one guy really to go to outside of, if you somehow were to trade for a left tackle, I'd be stunned in this league. Mm-hmm. But you have one guy sitting on the free agent market who's a left tackle. It's Rasheed Walker. Like, that would have to be, at this point, your last-ditch splash.
They had to overpay him?
Probably, and even the contract now. It's interesting he's lasted till day 3, because he felt like more of a day 1, day 2 guy here in the tampering window that he'd go. So maybe the market's come down, but the projected contracts on him were upwards of like $20 million a year.
I feel like Zion Johnson was the splash.
Yeah.
The 3-year, $49.5 million contract. I think that was your quote-unquote splash. Jenkins, Elgton Jenkins, 2 years, $24 million. Good money if you can get it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider, maybe that's your second splash. But I think that getting Zion, that and obviously Tyson Howard, they reworked his contract, gave him an extension after making that trade. So they made, I guess you could say, they made 2 strong splashes with the offensive line, and then a medium splash, and then a little drop in the bucket bringing Tevin Jenkins back. But that's pretty good work there by Andrew Berry. And I think that when you're talking about big money being spent, and by big money, I'm talking north of $14 million in annual value, I think Andrew Berry's done spending that kind of money this offseason. I think now he's looking for value at wide receiver. Can he poach someone from another team that maybe they're down on, right? That, hey, you know what? Reclamation project, we'll fix you here in Cleveland. Because while I have no faith in the Browns to fix anybody, and Coach knows this, every coach believes that they can fix a player.
Yep.
Every coach believes that. So,
and it doesn't always work, but that's the only chance you got.
Right.
So.
And when you're talking about salary cap management, and you're talking about roster management, money management, now we're getting into where can Andrew Berry find the value to fill some of these other holes that they have.
And they certainly have them, too.
Well, the thing you like about the offensive line when you talk about these guys who I think are really solid pros is now the offensive line is one of those groups that they all have to be together, right? It's a 5 as 1. So when you get that 5 as 1, a guy that maybe is just a medium splash can kind of up that a little bit if everybody around them is playing a little bit better because they know what they're doing. They're coached at a high level. So offensive line is one of those interesting positions. You don't need 5 stars. You need a couple really good players and then guys who kind of match and understand the scheme and what teams are trying to do. And that's what excites you about Monken and Warhop is that they're going to, with this versatility, is that they're going to do what these guys do well, attack defenses with what they do poorly. They got to fix that left tackle. But, again, it doesn't have to be necessarily an all-pro guy. They got to make sure they're playing as a unit, which, as we've seen, hasn't happened up front, and they've had a lot of run-throughs. If you get beat, that's one thing, but if guys are running free, that's a problem.
Going back to like 2010, that era, right? The Browns historically have had really good offensive linemen going all the way back. Joe Thomas in 2007, right? Alex Mack, let's throw him in there. Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller. They're not. It hasn't helped them win much. Okay, so that to Coach's point, yeah, it's important that they play collectively as a unit at a high level, but you don't have to have blockbuster players up front. By blockbuster, I mean perennial All-Pro, making top-tier money at their position to have a successful offensive line.
Who do you got? Who are you blocking? Right? It sounds kind of weird, but who do you have? In this front against this coverage, what we're calling, who do you have? It's like you see it in the NFL all the time. Like, you're right, Daryl, you're saying it best. Like, a cohesive unit. I'm in charge of this guy. Doesn't mean you're always going to win, but the Browns the last couple of years have not known who they're blocking, and that's where the problem lies. Then, of course, it looks bad. If you get beat, then you go, okay, that guy's better than our guy. But if he runs free, that's coaching, and that's what they got to kind of hopefully they're going to address here.
The last 2 years, coaching's been a problem there ever since, obviously, Bill Callahan left to coach for his son, who unfortunately did not last long as head coach of the Tennessee Titans. And Bill Callahan's one of the best in the business. But George Warhop's been here before. George Warhop is I would put him in the upper echelon of offensive line coaches in the National Football League. So they're in much better shape in that room than they were the last 2 years.
No doubt. We're going to get into some of this because despite the fact that we label Barry's, what he's done so far is pretty solid, he has missed out on a couple of guys. There are guys that the Browns wanted to go after, did not land. What does that say about it? Plus, Browns also made a defensive addition that wasn't so bad either. That's all coming your way in 5 minutes as well for the next hour and 20 minutes right here on the Fan Offseason Special.
miss out on great candidates with ZipRecruiter.
You can now watch The Fan live on YouTube. Catch The Ken Carman Show with Anthony Lima from 6 till 10 a.m. Baskin and Phelps 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. And Afternoon Drive with Nick Wilson and Jonathan Peterlin from 2 to 7 p.m. Each and every weekday. It's free. Subscribe to 92.3 The Fan on YouTube. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Back with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special. Still got plenty more to climb into. Browns making additions. Coming up here at 8 o'clock. It's been very offensive focused throughout this first hour, but there was a defensive addition, and what arguably probably could be made as the best player added to this roster was made on the defensive side of the ball in this period. We're going to get into Quincy Williams coming up at 8 o'clock. But I did think it was worth kind of mentioning because, Darryl, even you had brought up, and I agree with you, like, I would not consider this hyper-aggression out of Andrew Berry, right? This is not going out there and doing what the Raiders or the Titans are doing, which is just adding as much talent to their rosters basically as they can.
And spending a boatload of money to do it.
Yeah, throwing any money
in their
you can.
pockets.
They're overpaying.
Yes.
I mean, they really are, but that's what free agency is. You typically, if you're trying to build your team through free agency, you're going to overpay to do it. That's why and we've heard this here for years from many a GM, hasn't worked out all that well, but like the heart of your roster construction has to be draft and development, and then you supplement your needs through free agency and trades. And the Raiders and the Titans have struggled in that area, and so they're trying to fill a lot of massive holes on their roster by spending a lot of money. Whereas, what Andrew Berry is doing right now is I call it targeted free agency, right? Yes, he had 5 holes on his offensive line, made 1 trade. Signed 2 guys in free agency, brought another guy back in free agency, and we'll see what they do at wide receiver, okay? He likes trading for receivers. I do think that there's a good chance he could trade for somebody that, maybe a team has given up on and they can get value out of that particular player. I don't know necessarily wide receiver number 1 is coming through a trade, but just somebody that can catch a football and help them out offensively. But yeah, this has been very targeted and very disciplined by Andrew Berry, which is exactly what he told us he was going to do.
I don't know that, and listen, I won't go to hyper-aggressive because it's more so trying to get, I think, bigger name, bigger value players in here to begin with. The Browns did miss out on a couple of clear targets that they had identified. We were told that Zion Johnson was like basically target number 1, which I maybe could make an argument that it was actually Tyler Linderbaum.
It was Tyler Linderbaum, okay? Obviously, he was the first guy that they agreed to terms with in free agency. So, of course, he was their number 1 target. We got our man. No, you didn't. You wanted Tyler Linderbaum, and then the Raiders just blew the doors off everybody by giving him a contract worth $27 million in annual value. Well, the guarantees obviously don't support that. It's closer to $22, $23 million. But, that's a bridge too far. And I had been saying, not only on my Sunday show I talked about it, but also when I was filling in for Jeff Phelps yesterday as well. I really wasn't all that crazy about signing him because I feared that that's ultimately what it was going to be. Whoever signed him was going to overpay. Great player. Not going to dispute that, but spending $27 million a year on a center, no disrespect to centers. I know they touch the ball on every play, at least on the offensive side of things, right? But that's just insanity, okay? And that really, I think, sabotaged that position going forward for teams because everyone's going to look at that contract and be like, well, Tyler Linderbaum got, because of, what was it? I think $18 million was the previous high for a center in the National Football League. So not only was it a record contract for a center, it was like, there now is the Grand Canyon between those 2 contracts, right? It's not like we saw Myles Garrett and the edge rushers, right? That's a pretty good example, right? Myles, 5 years ago when he signed his, I think it was 5 for $125, and then a couple of weeks later that got topped, and then a couple of weeks after that got topped, right? And then Myles signed last year the $40 million in annual value contract extension with the Browns. And a couple months later, that got topped because that's how this goes. The market resets itself. The fact that the market for the top center in the NFL now is going to be north of $27 million is just beyond bananas to me. And I think Andrew Berry did the right thing by backing out.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that. Like, Creed Humphrey is probably, I mean, I would argue maybe a better center than Tyler Linderbaum is, and is getting $18 million a year comparatively to 27. Like, that's not a nothing jump. That is a ridiculous amount to have to pay for a guy that I don't think you can sit around and be angry that he misses out on him. Browns are also rumored to be interested in Elijah Vera Tucker, who ended up signing a 3-year deal with the Patriots, and they had pursued him, and I don't think it was ultimately money that had cut them out. It was more so just what I'm assuming is, well, be honest about it, would you rather play for the Patriots or the Browns right now? I mean, if you had your open choice, most people are probably taking the Super Bowl runner-ups over the team who just won 8 games in the last 2 years. It just makes too much sense. So,
and notice there's a lot of 3-year contracts being done right now. And that's because of the broadcast revenue. The broadcast deal is going to be up in 3 years. And, you know, there's already push right now for Roger Goodell to get those negotiated already. So, and that's why you're seeing a lot of these 3-year contracts. These agents are doing that specifically because the new media rights agreements in 3 years, 3-4 years down the road, are going to reshape the salary cap all over again. Because the cap right now, it's going up anywhere from $15 to $20 million per year. We had that dip during COVID, obviously, because no ticket revenue was allowed, right? The mega income for the NFL was their broadcast agreements, and that's what kept the league afloat there for a little bit. But now that every year they're seemingly finding hundreds of millions of dollars in additional broadcast revenue because they're selling all these holiday games. You got the Black Friday game package now. You got the Christmas package. You've got the Thanksgiving night pack. Like, they just seem to be pulling all these extra games out of the middle of nowhere, right? Now, every time they go overseas. Now, that's separate. That's a separate broadcast package and things like that. So as long as they keep finding hundreds of millions of dollars by selling these extra games, usually to the streaming services, that salary cap is going to continue on that trajectory. And I know we're going to get into the Deshaun situation here in a little bit, but it's part of the reason why you have seen Andrew Berry very smartly. The contract, not smart, but the way Andrew Berry has managed that contract and positioned the Browns to get out from underneath it, his projection of the salary cap and how it was going to evolve throughout the course of that contract, dead on the money, no pun intended.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hey, Coach, you look at it, I mean, do you feel any way you look at missing on guys like Elijah Vera Tucker, Tyler Linderbaum? Big deal, little deal, doesn't really bother you?
Well, $27 million is too much for a center. I agree with that. However, here's the way I look at it as an offensive coordinator. I'm going to draft Fernando Mendoza. Now, what's the best friend for a rookie quarterback who's going to be under a lot of pressure? Is that center. Yeah. That's going to help him with the A and B gap. So, obviously, I think when you're in a tunnel and you're saying, we're going to take Fernando Mendoza, who they think is going to be really good, and maybe they think he's a guy who's going to be a generational guy, whether he is or not, if they think that, then maybe they said that $27 million is worth it right now because we're not going to get him off to a bad start, because if you get off to a bad start as a quarterback, sometimes it's hard to come back from that. Oh. Sam Darnolds of the world are very rare. So, I think obviously they overspend on that position, but I see why they did it, and because they're trying to protect that first pick, and they're trying to make him as comfortable as possible. Vera Tucker, he was hurt last year. Not a lot. I think the guys they went out and got are really good football players. They've had some injuries in the past. These are guys who understand the game of football, and they block well, and they have limitations in the run game or the pass blocking, but they understand the game of football, and that's kind of overrated at times. So I think they did a really nice job of who they got so far, and we'll see what else they do. But no, I don't think it's a big deal. And obviously you spend $27 million, and you're saying, what else can you get? What else can you do? So. I like what they've done so far. And then you got to have guys like you guys were saying. DeJuan Jones has got to be healthy. He could be a great swing tackle if they can get a left tackle. Now he's a guy who can play both. They get a guard, then you can have Jenkins play both. Then you get a little versatility in there. So they're closer than you think. The left tackle is the key, but they're closer than you think up front.
Yeah, not all that far away. But Browns, obviously, plenty of offense additions. We're going to talk more on the offense coming up in the 8 o'clock hour. But coming up here in 5 minutes, they did make a defensive addition. Quincy Williams being brought in for the loss of Devin Bush. I didn't feel like it was that bad. We'll get everybody's thoughts here. Again, coming your way in 5 minutes. Jake Volnick, Lance Rise, and Daryl Ryder on the Fan Offseason Special.
on the Odyssey app. Headline sports news every 20 minutes here on 92.3 The Fan. From the University Hospital Sports Desk, I'm Michael Markach.
NFL free agency begins 4 p.m. Wednesday, and this is the place to talk about it. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Daryl Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
1 hour down, 1 to go with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special. Myself, Lance Reisland, Daryl Ryder, taking you guys through what is a very confusing time, because all I want to do, I just want to sit down and talk about Quincy Williams, the guy I'm excited for. The NFL just goes, absolutely not. Absolutely. On Tuesday at 8 o'clock, come on. You think you can talk about the Browns? No, of course not, because obviously previously reported the Ravens were sending away their 2026 and 2027 first-round picks in compensation back to the Raiders for Max Crosby, now being posted by your league insiders, people covering the Raiders. The Raiders have, sent out a graphic. I don't know where it's at because I can't find it on their social media.
It just hit the social media.
Okay.
So what they did is they sent the graphic to all the NFL insiders so that they could publish it. They gave them a 5-minute head start. And then now the Raiders have, because I did. It was mere seconds after I'm like, everyone's posting this graphic from the Raiders saying this deal is off. And I go on the Raiders social media accounts. I went to Instagram. I went to X. Nothing's on their accounts. And then 2 seconds after I post on X that everyone's tweeting out this graphic that the Raiders have yet to publish, the Raiders then finally published it on their X account. But yeah, pretty bananas. And look, not to get too in the weeds, but it was a trade agreement, okay? Like the Browns have a trade agreement in place right now with the Houston Texans to acquire Tyson Howard and then obviously give him that contract extension. However, that is not official yet. That's why there's been no comment from the Browns and all that, because these things can happen. What's interesting is that Mason Crosby was posting from Baltimore. So I don't know if this is medically related. Did he fail the physical? Whatever. Something seismic happened with this particular trade agreement. And so it's not official until it's official. And so the Raiders making it clear that the Baltimore Ravens have chosen not to submit the trade paperwork to the league office tomorrow at 4 p.m. when all these things get processed by the NFL. Because you're going to see all the reporting that's been done the last couple of days about all these contract agreements, the trade agreements and whatnot. The NFL league office, starting at 4 p.m. tomorrow, then begins officially processing all of these transactions league-wide, whether it's free agent signings, re-signings, and then obviously trade agreements. All that has to get processed, and it's going to take the league office a couple hours tomorrow to do all this paperwork. But yeah, the fact that this has now fallen through, and the Raiders are squarely putting it. This is the statement. Quote: "The Baltimore Ravens have backed out of our trade agreement for Max Crosby. We will have no further comment at this time." End quote. Again, that from the Las Vegas Raiders. And so they are putting this squarely on the Baltimore Ravens as to why this trade agreement has now fallen through. Max Crosby is now back to being a Las Vegas Raider for now.
Yeah, as for the time being, I imagine might be a decent shot that he still gets dealt somewhere else, because there were definitely some other teams in the mix looking for Crosby. But, this, you can't argue, it reshapes the AFC North once again, right? We looked at a Ravens team last year that struggled at times to pass rush. They moved off of a guy like Odafe Oweh and decided, hey, maybe the money's too rich. We see him pick up a $100 million contract this offseason. And they said, okay, we need to get after, somebody to get after the passer. It's the AFC North after all. You're dealing in a division right now that, as slated at least last year, had Aaron Rodgers in it, had Joe Burrow in it, has, tremendous pass rushers like Myles Garrett and TJ Watt in it. And something went down, and you don't know, is this injury? Is this, we saw in the NBA, the Lakers back out of the Mark Williams deal, basically saying didn't pass the physical, but everybody else and all the other doctors who went and relooked at it were like, he probably should have passed the physical. Like, by normal physical standards, he should have passed. But the Lakers held it to a higher degree. There's so many things that can go, but the AFC North definitely reshaped once again as we thought it was going to be.
Well, and then Spotrac, they do a great job tracking all the contracts around the They just post, the Raiders just lost $30 million in cap space.
That's about how that one goes for right now, yeah.
Well, the thing about Max Crosby is that I've always said this about the Steelers, and the same thing with the Ravens. They draft very well. They draft who they are. And Max Crosby is a Ravens type of guy. So not only was he going to a team that kind of would hurt the Browns and obviously what they do, but he was in a scheme fit that really was good for him. He was going to get isolated out there on that tackle. Obviously, we'll see what happens. For when I look at those type of things, you hope there's not like an injury thing that a degenerative thing they're kind of looking at, down the road. We'll see. But, that's an interesting 8 o'clock.
The reactions on social media right now, brought to you by Shabby Jewelers because it's Premier Jewelers Store, are just right now off the chain. I can't read some of them. And these are national people. The language being used by some of these accounts are just, everyone's shocked. Like, the Mason Crosby trade, it got people's attention because there were a couple first-round picks attached to it. But the fact that this trade has fallen through has turned the NFL insiders right now upside down on their heads. Like, this is just incredible, watching the reaction from everybody. I kept mine PG. I went, wait, what? Question mark, exclamation point, question mark, exclamation point.
Which was everybody's reaction, by the way. I mean, everybody is baffled by this. Jordan Schultz adding a really interesting mix into this. He said a text that he got from a GM, Baltimore is going to sign Trey Hendrickson. Watch, which we are also getting reports earlier on today. Trey Hendrickson expected to make his announcement on where he's going tomorrow. That also, reopens the window for, more so this sort of Mark Williams idea of it you went out and got Max Crosby, who's on the third highest defensive end contract in NFL history right now, only behind TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. You also could have just reevaluated and went, we can get Trey Hendrickson for a hell of a lot cheaper. In a lot of ways, maybe tried to finagle your way around this if that ends up being the case. Because I don't think that's completely out of the question. The Ravens need a pass rusher. There's no doubt about it. They need to be able to get after the quarterback this year. Trey Hendrickson would be a guy that they could, and given the situation that went down with the Bengals, it wouldn't surprise me if he wants to stay in the AFC North and get a little revenge too.
Well, and what's interesting right now, it's crickets from Baltimore, right? Mm-hmm. The NFL insiders, they're not only the transaction exchange for the NFL, but like they're the information exchange in the NFL. There's nothing coming out of Baltimore right now. Something this big, this massive. Crickets right now coming from the Ravens as far as why this trade has fallen through. I'm sure we're going to get something here at any moment. We'll update you as soon as we find something out. But it just...
Here we go right now, yeah. Daryl. Diana Rossini putting out on social media just moments ago, Max Crosby did not pass his physical today. Per sources, Ravens getting their first-round picks back.
And there it is, yeah. So, and that's what a lot of people were speculating. This had to be a pass the physical type of a situation, and he didn't. And yeah, when you don't pass a physical, that usually kills trades. So,
well, it's got to be something substantial, though, right? Because this day and age, with their ability to get guys back from injury, so you worry about degenerative things like lower back and knees and ACL. You worry about that stuff if it, in terms of like, is it a long lasting kind of thing moving down the line here?
Yeah, and I do, if I remember correctly, I think that Crosby had a knee cleanup or procedure after the season. So maybe that's why, and maybe the Ravens looked at that and said, hey, we're not giving up 2 first-round picks for a guy coming off of a knee procedure. But, like...
You knew that prior to, without the legitimate physicals, but...
Yeah, like that I thought was common knowledge that he had a little bit of a...
Or is that the easy way out, right? You could say that there's something, obviously maybe he rubbed some people wrong or something happened, and you can use that, right? The physical, you can use that. Who knows? Well,
if you're Max Crosby, what are you thinking right now? You're like you're house shopping or condo shopping or apartment shopping in Baltimore because he was posting on his social accounts views from downtown Baltimore and how excited he was to be there and. Well, sorry, you got to go back to Vegas.
At least or you got to go somewhere. It's the classic of you don't got to go home, but you can't stay here, okay?
Right. Yeah.
You don't got to go back to Vegas, but you're not staying here right now. You're not going to be in Baltimore.
On the bright side for Max, the Raiders roster's a little better than when he left. A day ago, right?
I still don't know that guy wants to be back. And listen, that's the other thing is that there's going to certainly be teams reinterested in this. I mean, the other kind of valued part of this too is this does more than just the AFC North impact the Browns, and not in the most massive way. But you think about the draft; it's going to be the Raiders drafting at 14. It's now, as it stands right now, once again the Ravens drafting at 14, which I think dramatically changes that pick. I mean, we were looking at least I was looking at 14, going. I mean, seems like a prime spot to take one of these receivers.
Yeah.
I don't see the Ravens going out and taking a receiver at 4. I mean, they could. It's on the table, but they at least sounded like earlier this offseason they were relatively comfortable with the wide receiver room they had for the most part. So do you go out and get another guy to put next to Zay Flowers? Because I imagine the Raiders definitely needed somebody to catch the ball that wasn't named Brock Bowers that was sitting on that team.
Well, yeah, and for it depends on the guys that they like. Or kind of like what Todd Monken liked. So who knows what kind of receiver he liked? The Zay Flowers, those guys in the slot. Bateman's there, but he's been up and down. It'll be interesting because it changes the draft. It changes the thought process, who they have to go out and get. Their defensive structure now changes. Going back to what Daryl said, that was a big put that magnet up on the board, at defensive end. It will be very, very interesting. Like I said, the injury, is it because of injury or did they use the injury because something else happened? Obviously, that'll come out very soon. But that changes the AFC a little bit in terms of the Ravens, who are kind of in transition, losing who they lost. And I know Jesse Minter's going to do a great job, but it's a good thing for the Browns, to be honest with you. It's a very good thing for the Browns.
I mean, it just flat out, there's not many guys who are going to be even in contention to be moved to – I mean, I don't like to use the word scared of, but that I'm more scared of than Max Crosby actually being on the Ravens. Like, there's just not pass rushers of that caliber floating around. Again, Trey Hendrickson is very good, and 2 years ago had his career year. Even if that's the guy who ends up in Baltimore, I'm much less afraid of Trey Hendrickson than I am of Max Crosby on any given day.
You think?
Yeah, I would say so.
You know what? You know who's feeling really, really good right now? Who's breathing the largest sigh of relief of anybody in the National Football League? It's Joe Burrow.
Yeah, probably.
For sure. As a
offensive line, I would definitely be
tough 6 games when you talk about the AFC North for him, for sure.
I mean, just give the man a break is all he's just like, give me a break, please. Anybody else? I don't want to go up against the 3 top paid pass rushers twice a year, each of them twice a year. Not that great of a feeling, but obviously a very odd situation playing out. I mean, as Daryl said, when we get more information, if anything else pops out about this, you guys are going to be sure to hear it right here. But we will get into the Browns' defensive moves because as now one defense gets slightly worse in the AFC North, the Browns still did get better yesterday. We will talk about Quincy Williams.
We're talking about Quincy.
We're getting there.
We promise. We are going to talk about Quincy Williams. We promise.
I don't know. Is there another defender?
You've been waiting all show for it.
Is there one more defender that can back out that could ruin this? Because
could happen.
Always be on the table.
NFL will give it 5 minutes.
Somebody, maybe 2 will step away from Kevin Stefanski and derail us or something. But the plan is Quincy Williams in 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Rise, and Daryl Ryder, all with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
From the University Hospital Sports Desk, I'm Michael Markoch.
Get all the latest news during NFL free agency's legal tampering period. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Fan Offseason Special and Browns
Quincy
defense.
Williams.
Quincy Williams. Just get it out there.
Get it, go quick.
The word is in.
Go
Quincy
quick.
Williams this segment. We're talking about him. It's
Finally,
real.
finally, we get to talk about the great Quincy Williams.
I mean, might be the best signing by the Browns so far during this tampering window, and it's taken until 8:20. But listen, we made 3 offensive line signings. I was like, this is a great place to start. We'll get to defense. We'll get there.
This has been a dream show for Coach.
Absolutely right.
He's loving it.
Absolutely.
loving
Smile
it.
ear to ear.
He
Absolutely.
loves talking about the big fatties up front.
It's always a good time. Listen, like I said, played offensive line. I stare at the offensive line. I'm one of the gross human beings who will go back. I'm rewinding games, being like, how did this play break apart? And just watching offensive linemen.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you rewind. You're like, that could be me. What
no,
happened?
absolutely not.
Mom, Dad, what did you do to me?
Listen, I'm all right on jeans. I'm 6'1", 6'2". I could have probably made it as probably only about a center. I think that's about the only spot I had a chance. Certainly wasn't getting to a right tackle.
No, long
guard,
snapper.
probably not.
Long
Hey,
snapper. That's where you could have gone.
Listen, that's a dream job in the NFL. You get paid
That's
plenty
a
of money.
That's a good job.
Plenty of money just
Third
to be
string
able to snap
quarterback's
ball
pretty
far.
good too, though.
Yeah, it's not bad. Emergency quarterback.
Because you still go down as a punt snapper. You can go down, you can catch a shot, but third string quarterback, you're pretty good. Red shirt on during the week.
I think the best job in the NFL is punter.
It's also pretty good.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure there, though, right?
lot
Like
of
you
guys
still
get
got
cut,
to,
yeah.
you still got like big games, cold weather, punt out of your end zone. Third string quarterback,
Because you know what?
it doesn't really matter what you do.
I know we got to dedicate some time to
we're still
Quincy
not,
here,
we're
okay?
still skipping
We're still
Quincy.
there.
but I'm totally going to derail things right now. Corey Bajorquez is probably not going to be back. Brown's going to need a punter. They need a coffin corner kicker.
Is he gonna outprice himself?
No, he's just not good at coffin corner kicks. That's why they're because you don't need a boomer anymore, right? Because we're Todd Monken's projecting that his offense is actually going to be watchable and that they're going to get a first down here and there and be able to, cross the 50 with regularity. So now you don't need a boomer for a punter to flip field position. Now you need a precision guy that can, that excels in dropping the punts inside the
I think he can do that too.
line.
I really do.
Yeah, well,
I understand what you're saying, though. He's a boomer, and there's guys out there that specialize in
Yeah,
that. But
I
boy,
don't-
has he been good, though.
Yeah,
Boy, has he been really good.
Yeah, and the Browns won 8 games the last 2 years. So there
Fair,
you go.
Yeah.
Listen, even if they get past
Fair
the
is
50,
fair.
if you let Kevin call
I'm
the
just
play,
going
he
to
still
keep
might
reminding
punt.
us, like every time we talk about how good the Browns won 8 games the last 2 years, okay?
It's true.
Hey.
Listen, special teams are bad. It was not on the punter. And that was the last on the
you
kicker.
are what your record says you are.
That's right.
That's the bottom line. It really is true.
All right, I'm going. Quincy Williams.
There it is.
We're getting there. We took enough of a break.
Cut
Quincy
us off.
Williams.
It's like hard out. Cut us out.
All right, Quincy Williams signing with the Browns, now reported as of this morning, 2 years, $13 million deal, a direct result of Devin Bush now signing with the Chicago Bears, or intending to sign with the Chicago Bears on a 3-year, $30 million deal, I believe it was. Immediate reaction when I see Devin Bush go is, oh no, right? Like, I mean, that was a guy who 125 tackles last year, was playing with his hair on fire, easily the best year of his career. I mean, he was a guy that you identified that, hey, the money might go up, but it might be worth to have Devin Bush here just because he basically fills the exact need that you need in that spot in this defense. So immediately red flag goes up. Devin Bush isn't here. Where do they turn to next? Andrew Berry had it basically knocked out in like what felt like, I think, about 2 hours. Devin Bush is gone. Quincy Williams, you're in. To the point where, I talked about it last night to open up the show. I looked at it, it's no worse than maybe a lateral move from Devin Bush to Quincy Williams, assuming, obviously, health is there for both guys. That's a 2-time All-Pro. That's a guy who 4 straight years prior to this last year where he dealt with an injury, was up over 105 tackles. He's a guy that plays downhill and, picks up a ton of tackles and plays fast. He's basically exactly what you're asking Devin Bush to do. It feels like all over again.
Yeah, I mean, you basically swapped players. Really.
For less money, too, by the way.
For less money, and they basically can do the same thing. So This is a former All-Pro, okay, at his position. You're going to pay him a little less than what you would have had to pay Devin Bush. I think and Coach could probably speak to this a little more than me because he breaks down the film, but I think he'll fit really well next to Carson Schlesinger. And then that's, when you're looking at the defensive side of the ball and your pairings matter. And I think that Williams will fit in perfectly with Carson and give them the same production, if not even maybe a little more explosive playmaking production than they got from Devin Bush. So I think this is potentially, we spent a lot of time talking about the offensive line, and understandably so because of the makeover that room needed. But I really think that this might be the sneaky best signing for the Browns this offseason.
Well, I tell you what, and the thing, going on what you said, Daryl, he blitzes better than Devin Bush. All right. Now, there's a couple things that won't go, people won't understand, but you're right. Devin Bush is not a very vocal guy. So Carson Schlesinger had to be that vocal leader as a rookie and be the guy who makes all the tackles.
And by the way, did a phenomenal job.
Just incredible. Now he's got a guy who's going to bring some of that leadership, especially during the week in practice and stuff. But yes, skill-wise, you're talking about the defense playing downhill. And the thing that Quincy does so well is he pulls the trigger. And in this defense, you're reading and reacting, but you have to believe what you see and you got to go. And that's what he does as well and probably better. I'm a huge Devin Bush fan, but picking up Quincy Williams to me, that's it might be, not only is it cheaper, but it might be
an upgrade.
It really might be, just because of the experience and the leadership he's going to bring. He comes off the edge. If you want to blitz him, he's a very good blitzer.
I mean, Coach, I got pointed out to on social media after we talked about it. A clip from 2024 with him blitzing on Kyler Murray.
Yeah. Popped
his helmet right off. I mean, one of the more explosive hits that I've seen.
And he's just a guy, he plays with great energy, great passion. He fits the mold of this defense. And once again, I'm all for, and I tweeted out earlier this week, Devin Bush had a great year, but part of that, and credit to him, but the scheme helped him. And sometimes when you go to a different scheme, it might not be the same for Devin Bush. And I'll tell you what, Quincy Williams is now coming to a scheme that is going to maximize his talent. So he's been with the Jets, and he's played in some really good schemes. But this is a scheme, Rubenberg, they're going to turn him loose. He's going to be a very, very good player, and he's going to take some of that leadership responsibility off of Schlesinger, who, again, has just played way above his years. But now he can play a little bit, too, without having to get everybody lined up. He's going to have a running mate that can get everybody lined up as well.
It's really interesting because the two guys in very different spots. Obviously, Devin coming off of a career year. Quincy's coming off of almost like a career low year, at least within the last 5 or 6 years for him, because he dealt with the injury. And then when he had returned from injury, didn't really have the same level of production. I think ended up getting even maybe benched a little bit with New York and not playing as much. Yeah. Now, you question how much of that was, how much did New York want to win football games?
This is the other part of when you're talking about players that, go through, those downturns, right? Place matters. Where you're playing matters. The situation, the environment matters. Let's be honest about it. The Jets have been the dumpster fire of the NFL more consistently. I mean, as much as the Browns have been, the Jets have been on a whole nother level, right? And so I think that plays into the drop-off, if you will.
And when he came back, too, I mean, it was post the Quinn Williams, Sauce Gardner trade where the Jets were just acquiring picks. I mean, we not only saw his play drop off, we saw Jermaine Johnson's play drop. You had less talent around you. It was bound to the numbers weren't going to look the same. The defense wasn't going to look the same. It makes a lot of sense. And I don't think I want to put a ton of really value into him getting benched either, just because of where that Jets team was at, what made the most sense for them. I mean, organizationally, if they wanted to sit there and go, maybe pulling Quincy off the field might give us a worse chance to win football games. I don't put it beyond any franchise that was in their spot to go, we might want to lose games, which they, again, signaled very clearly when they traded away their two best defensive players, inarguably, in Quinn Williams and Sauce.
Well, and the thing about the Jets, when you get to the point where they're at, if you're throwing games, if you're tanking, everybody knows that, right? So that affects, not only is he not playing well in the game, but that affects practice. That affects morale. That affects how they approach the game, the attention to detail. So is the linebacker coach, is the defensive coordinator, are they breaking down the film like they should? Are they going over tendencies? You would hope so in the NFL. but something's going on because you watch the film and you watch him from 23 when he had 135 plus tackles. This is a guy who can play. This is a guy who plays with a hair on fire. But I think in this scheme, he'll even be better because, once again, these linebackers are going to be asked to clean up the mess that the Browns' really good front four, creates. And now they're going to have two really good guys. And Devin Bush was like that too. Yep. But again, I think you might even get an upgrade. But at the worst, it's going to be lateral. Another really good year with a really good linebacker.
And you want to talk about, how does Quincy Williams end up here? How does he pick it? Well, Mike Rutenberg, who's your current defensive coordinator, was over with the Jets, played with Quincy Williams, and had actually talked about him earlier on in this offseason when we got to listen to the coordinators. And Daryl, as you posted on social media, Quincy was mentioned by name.
I go to Quincy Williams. I was in Jacksonville with Quincy, and we drafted him. Quincy and I connected from the heart, from the start. It went heart to football. And we spent a lot of time on our hearts and then a lot of time on football.
I mean, listen, it was a short clip, Daryl. I think you mentioned that there were a couple other players thrown out in the elongated clip of that.
Yeah, it was a 3-minute soundbite that I cut down into the 16 minutes because he mentioned a bunch of other players in there as well. That was in response. He was, again, circled back to building relationships with players and, because the whole narrative about, hey, everyone in the defensive room really loved Jim Schwartz. What are you going to do about that, right? These guys actually going to play hard for you like they did Schwartz. And so this was later in the press conference circling back to that very topic about relationship building. And look, I mean, the NFL is a very incestuous league. Look at what's happened in Atlanta with Kevin Stefanski. He's got the band back together. Coaches, former players. I don't know that he should be going back to the former player because, they weren't, they were okay here in Cleveland, but again, the Browns didn't win a lot here, right? So players and GMs, Eric Mangini brought every over-the-hill New York Jet, New England Patriot that he could find the 2 years he was here to just kind of, because he wanted to instill the Mangini way in the locker room, so he'd bring those familiar faces. So, and you see this all across the league. John Harbaugh in New York trying to poach from the Ravens, right, and bring guys from Baltimore to New York or guys he played against, right? Greg Newsome, whom he played against, the Giants agreed to sign him today. So, it's not just a mutual admiration society. It's not just a respect thing. It's a familiarity thing. It's hey, I'm going to bring in guys that know how I do it and will do it my way, okay? And so those relationships do matter. And we sarcastically talk about, the pre-draft process and the top 30 visits. And, why would you do a top 30 visit with a guy that you have no intention of drafting or whatever? And a lot of times you'll do it with the quarterbacks. You want to build the book on them, right? Try and figure out what makes them tick a little bit. Maybe there's a little something when you play against them you can use against them, right? And really pick at. Or if the player eventually becomes available in a trade or free agents, you go back, hey, back when we were going through the draft process, we interviewed this guy. We brought him in. Let's go back to our notes and look. So relationships matter a lot around the National Football League between players and coaches and executives. And that's why, again, when you see the merry-go-round of coaches and players or coaches and GMs, I should say, going to new spots, they're always going back and wanting to bring in the familiar faces. And Quincy happens to be one of those familiar faces that Mike Rutenberg is very familiar with, very comfortable with, and is also a very good player. And I think that's going to resonate through that defensive room as far as, helping him extend that olive branch to guys like Myles Garrett and Carson Schlesinger and Denzel Ward, who truly loved playing for Jim Schwartz.
I mean, I think that's a big point. Like, you point out the fact that, not only is it, because if you're Mike Rutenberg take over this defense, you don't have a ton of control to bring in, a ton of even your guys. Because
it's pretty much the whole defensive staff was pretty much kept intact. I think they brought in a new assistant defensive line coach. They gave promotional titles to Jason Tarver and Ephraim Banda. Both of those guys I expect are going to be defensive coordinators within the next 2 coaching cycles. Yep. Okay. But yeah, I mean, he walked in and the roster and the defensive coaching staff pretty much intact, and he's just kind of taken the thing over.
I mean, listen, not a bad spot to be. I mean, if you take that over good defense, but then having a guy who should be one of your tackle leaders on your team, should be a guy that obviously, coach pointed to leadership, and like I said, kind of a guy to almost bridge that gap.
It's not a good spot in this regard, though. It better work.
Well, there's
I mean, there's a lot of pressure on him now because unlike the offensive side where you're having to build it, right? You legit have to build the defensive side's already built, and the expectation is for Rutenberg just to pick up the baton and keep running with it. And if there's significant drop-off on that side of the ball, I think Coach can speak to this more than I can, but I think there's tremendous pressure on Mike Rutenberg. Tremendous.
Oh, because you're right. It's already been done, right? And a lot of time, most of the time when you come in as a coach, it's because what you're taking over has been terrible. That's how most coaches are, unless you're, so now when you come in, this situation is even harder when you come into with success because now you're expected to keep that. I think what Quincy Williams does for this defense is that he gives a level of credibility to Rutenberg because he can come in and say, hey, this works. But there's also terminology. There's small things throughout practice and meetings, how he runs meetings, how he runs practice, his expectations of how things should be done. He can kind of echo that to the veterans, right? And Rutenberg doesn't seem like a guy. He's not a watching and going back and learning him. He's not a my way or the highway. It's we're going to do it our way. We're going to play with our hair on fire all the time. And I think having a guy like Quincy Williams should kind of just bridge the gap between what he wants to do, the success they've had, and then he can kind of help with terminology and expectations more throughout the week than even more than on game day.
Yeah, I mean, big stuff. Obviously, Quincy Williams a big pickup, but we are going to switch back to the offensive side coming up here in about 5 minutes because people are still talking about the quarterback room. Browns have not made a move there. Adam Schefter specifically mentioning one quarterback by name, and it might not be.
And it's not an accident. I'm going to tell you why.
That's coming your way again. 5 minutes. It's Jake Volnick, Lance Reisland, Darryl Ryder with you guys on the Fan Offseason Special.
give you time to change the outcome, but prediabetes does. Take the 1-minute test today at doihaveprediabetes.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and its Prediabetes Awareness Partners.
There's only one place to hear breaking Browns news. This is the radio home of the Cleveland Browns, 92.3 The Fan. Catch all the latest Browns and NFL news and conversations right here. It's the Fan Offseason Special. Here are your hosts, Jake Volnick, Darrow Ryder, and Coach Lance Reisland. We are Sports Radio 92.3 The Fan.
Final segment with you guys here on the Fan Offseason Special. Overtime with myself, Jake Volnick, coming up at 9 o'clock to carry you through the end of the night, where we'll be on high alert for whatever the hell else is going to happen outside of Max Crosby. Because who knows? Maybe the Browns pick up a player. Maybe 7 players decide they don't want to play there anymore, and agreements are bet off.
Well, they might have to. That may have just totally detonated everything the Raiders have done the last couple of days.
I mean, getting $30 million ripped away from your available cap space will certainly do that.
That totally explains the saltiness of the statement that they put out.
Just very blunt to the point. The Ravens backed out. No comment, because that's probably, we're going to get on the phone really fast.
Hey, Jerry Jones, how about a 1 and a 2 for Max?
Yeah, I mean, 2 1s, no. 1 and a 2, no. I mean, listen, we'll take 2 2s.
I don't know. Didn't someone report that the Browns inquired and picked up a phone?
I don't know if that even happened. It wouldn't surprise me. Andrew Berry is the king of inquiring and the king of not pulling the trigger on 90% of the inquiries.
You know what? That means he's doing his job.
It does.
Phone calls are free as long as they're in your cell plan, right?
Yeah, just don't. If they put a team out over the seas, you might have to hesitate a little bit before you make that call. I know that they're covering the long distance quite yet, but we are going to get to kind of a. Daryl, you had pointed this out. Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show and decided to mention one Cleveland Browns quarterback by name. And as you alluded to in the break, you don't think this was a mistake.
Shedeur Sanders.
Pro Bowler.
They have Deshaun Watson. And by the way, let me say this. There are people out there, and we'll see how it unfolds, but there are people out there who believe that Deshaun Watson could very well be the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns.
Daryl, you said not an accident, not a coincidence. Why you say it?
Well, Mary Kay Cabot had also reported that during that 21-day practice window, there were folks within the Browns that felt that Watson looked like the best quarterback on the field. I don't think that's an accident. I think they're laying the groundwork that there is a very real possibility Deshaun Watson will be the Week 1 starter. It feels like this is setting up for all the conversation we had to this point this offseason about the quarterbacks that might be available, Malik Willis and every other journeyman out there, right? That this very may well come down to just being Deshaun v. Shedeur, and Deshaun is going to look better than Shedeur because Deshaun has the experience that Shedeur does not have. And I feel like that this is like a slow rollout to get everybody prepared for the possibility and the reality of Deshaun Watson, if he's healthy, being the Week 1 starter. Now, how long will Deshaun be able to survive as the starting quarterback? I'm not all that optimistic, but it feels like this is intentionally being put out there. And the fact that Adam Schefter went on Pat McAfee's show on day 2 of free agency and it's like, oh, yeah, by the way, yeah, pretty good chance, Deshaun could be the Week 1 starter for the Browns. Like, I feel like they're laying the groundwork for this thing.
I guess my pushback would be the fact of, I've heard, several of our local beat say, and not something to the similar, but the possibility, we've heard that, Deshaun's on this roster. It always gives him a chance to start, and there's a possibility of it. I mean, just looking at the room, I think all of us would scream, well, of course there's a possibility, right? New coaches in there. Deshaun is still, if you could tap into anything that you haven't had over the last 6 years, it's going up against a 5th-round pick who played 7 games last year and certainly had his ups and downs. Like, I don't see what makes the Adam Schefter quote all that much different from what we've seen. And partially, too, I think that Todd Monken, I don't think, has been lying to us throughout this process. You haven't seen him play. It's probably going to be a competition. Now, Deshaun could certainly win that competition. I think the groundwork for the potential of Deshaun starting, it makes sense to lay it because if he wins the job, he wins the job. But I don't necessarily think that anybody at the Browns had made up their mind. I would think In my mind, I would hope probably that front office-wise, you probably aren't necessarily pulling for Deshaun in the final year of his contract to be your starter because no matter what way that ends, it probably leads to more questions than it does answers.
Well, and the other thing, too, is, and I've talked about this extensively, this has nothing to do with the off-the-field circumstances that surrounded him when they made that trade, which was why I was vehemently against them not only trading for him, but then giving him the contract that they did after he initially said, no, Cleveland, you're out, okay, as far as the bidding, and they made the Godfather offer that he couldn't refuse, and he took it. Because I really don't think he wanted to be here.
I mean, I think that's pretty clear when you rule him out from contention among everybody else. It certainly wasn't the top destination.
But here's the reality, okay? Sat out the 2021 season, okay? Agreed to sit out 11 games in 2022 with Cleveland. Played 6 games that year. Played 6 games the next year. Played 7 games the next year, okay? Missed all of last season. Throw in a shoulder injury, rupturing the same Achilles 2 times within 3 months. Over a 6-year, this is over 6 years. There isn't a world that I expect this guy to do anything. Okay? Yeah, he's going to look real good in practice. He looks great on Instagram, by the way. Those 3-cone drills he does, those running back drills he's been doing, those agility drills he's been putting out there, all looks great. The ball, looks beautiful coming out of his hands. That's all well and good. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though, about Deshaun. When he came back in 2022 from the suspension, right? All we did was make excuses, right? Sat out a full season, had to sit 11 games.
Knock the rust off was in our vocabulary.
Right, got to knock the rust off. Comes back from the shoulder injury. Same thing. Looks terrible out there. Got to knock the rust off. Now, what do you think the conversation is going to be, right? So I have no expectations. I think it's a horrible idea to even consider putting him on the field this year.
What if he's the best guy, though, week 1?
I would rather play Shedeur Sanders.
All right. See, I'm a little different. So I'm looking at it, everybody.
Because you know what? I have an expectation he's going to look great in practice. We're all going to ooh and ah. Just those tight spirals coming out of his hand. How effortless. There's no real pressure in practice. There's no contact in practice. There's no appropriate fear in practice. Okay? Quarterback is off limits, and I understand why. It's the same, right? I get it, but I'm just saying that this guy, he looked like Dylan Gabriel at times, okay? And Dylan Gabriel is supposed to be the supercomputer, the big processor, right? So, same thing with Shedeur, right? Processing, the speed of the game, seeing things. Just going to be different for him. It's going to be the same thing. Going to look great in practice. Probably going to look like the best guy, okay? To your point, Coach. Probably going to look like the best guy. I'm telling you, he ain't going to be the best guy. I have no expectation he's going to be the best guy because every time he's come back from the suspension to the shoulder, he's missed way too much time. And you know what? Maybe part of the plan is going to be, we're going to get as much out of Deshaun as we can this year and play him, and we're going to lose our way into a top pick because, well, he was the best guy, to your point, right? In our mind, he was the best guy, and, well, the results are going to be what the results are going to be. And I just don't know that Browns fan can stomach another year like they've had the last 2 years, and I don't know that ownership can stomach it because people are forgetting. They are now beginning the process of wanting to sell suites and PSLs in the new stadium.
Oh.
Okay? This franchise has been hot garbage since 1999. Fans have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars of their money in season tickets and PSLs for this organization over the last 27 years, and they've gotten 4 winning seasons to show for it, 0 division titles, 0 home playoff games. They're a bad investment if you're a fan, and ownership knows it because they're seeing, and I get the comments too. I see the comments. Fans are dropping the season tickets. Fans aren't interested. That's why they're rolling out now. You're going to get credits now. If you bought a PSL for the existing stadium, we're going to credit you towards your PSL in the new stadium. That's why they're rolling that out, because it's overwhelmingly negative from Browns season ticket holders about the product that this franchise puts out there year in and year out. And I'm telling you, you put Deshaun Watson on that field, did everybody forget what happened?
But don't care.
But
the thing about Monken, though, is that that's part of the ripple effect of getting rid of Kevin, right? Is that Monken doesn't care about any of that, right? And I, everything you're saying is absolutely correct in terms of how the fans, but Monken shouldn't care. Monken's only thought is, who is the best quarterback for week 1? Monken is 6 years old. The idea of we're going to build towards 2027, and as a football coach, you have no chance unless your thought is, I'm going to figure out how I win week 1. Now, everything you're saying about Deshaun Watson, if Kevin was here, I think that would kind of tie in more. I think Monken is like, we're going to play the best people. And once again, I think you're right. The idea that he's got to go do it because he does look incredible in practice, and he does do those things, but he's also looked incredible in games. It hasn't been recently, but again,
6 years ago he looked great.
Doesn't matter. But that doesn't matter to Todd Monken, right? That does, in terms of if it was Kevin, he's been terrible for Stefanski's tenure. This is Todd Monken. Todd Monken's hopefully saying, I don't care what anybody says. I don't care who's buying PSLs. I don't care about any of that. I got to put the best people, because the only way you get people back on board is to win. And that's what you got to do. And the best players win. The last game he looked great was the game he broke his shoulder against Baltimore in the second half. Really good second half,
Let that comeback, right? That's the last time he looked good as a quarterback. And you know what? He really hadn't looked good here. Now, I would hear the argument 2 years ago or a year ago, right? No, it's been 6 years.
No, I'm saying if
it's played 19 games with the Browns.
But if it's an open competition, and you're right about, that's also very fair, the idea that it's hard to really judge a quarterback because they don't get touched, right? So without pressure, without people in your face, without the idea of going down. Now, if he was a rookie, that would worry me, but he's a guy who's been there. Once again, everything you're saying is absolutely correct. My thought is just Monken, right?
Yeah.
Monken's thinking, I got to win. And all the stuff that's happened before, you would think wouldn't matter to him. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Obviously, I'm hoping that they're not planning for the future, because I've said this before. Those who plan for the future usually aren't a part of it, right? He's got to try to figure out how to win week 1 unless the coach tells him.
All right, well, we're going to have more conversations, I'm sure, surrounding Deshaun versus Shedeur versus
Dylan.
Or you can put Dylan's name in there. Dylan might be competing with Tua Tagovailoa and
it's a
Michael
lefty.
Penix.
It's the southwpaw down in Atlanta. 3 southpaws. It's coming soon.
We've definitely never seen 3 southpaws on the same roster, right?
No,
I don't
there's
even know
no way.
have we seen 2? And off the top of my head, I couldn't think of one.
No, absolutely not.
Well, they have now, and maybe they'll have 3 by the end of it.
Insert your Kevin Stefanski loves him some left-handed Hawaiian quarterbacks joke here.
All in there.
Absolutely.
But we're going to have plenty of time to talk about that down the line. Browns, I'm sure, will make more moves by the time that we get to next week, too. So we'll have that to look forward to. But we do have to get moving. The overtime with myself coming up from 9 to 11. You guys, appreciate you both. Always fun to hang out. And we'll be doing it again next Tuesday. Again, that'll be 7 to 11 next Tuesday, but we got to run. It's a Fan Offseason Special. For myself, for Lance Rise, and for Daryl Ryder, we'll see you next week right here on the Fan Offseason Special on 92.3 The Fan.